Hi.
All right, great. Well, why don't it's a little after 7 o'clock, so I'd like to call to order the Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, May 26th. And please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Why isn't this letting me go? There we go. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the
United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, great. So moving on to our agenda, and may I have a motion to approve the minutes of May 11th, 2020?
So moved.
Second? Okay, any changes, questions? No? Okay, all.
I have one question.
Yep.
The long-term recovery committee, is that required by the state or is that suggested by the state?
My understanding is required by the state. Came through, and we're actually having to submit, where we are in that process through our regional coordinators for the emergency operations. Okay. So my understanding, it is required.
Okay.
So all in favor of the minutes for May 11th, say aye.
Aye.
All right. No abstentions. Great. Okay. Let's move on to first Selectwoman's update. So I guess really just following on what we talked about at our last meeting, an update on town hall operations. We actually moved our appointment only starting date to June 1st, and we'll have all employees on site, and we will start taking appointments on a very limited basis for the public on June 1st going forward. And each department head is going to be kind of listing what would be they would be deemed necessary as an appointment. And the idea is just to kind of keep at minimum in terms of traffic into town hall. There's so many things now that people have been accustomed to completing online. We've also set up drop boxes so that rather than just come in to deliver a document, if they're going to be put in a secure drop box with the assurance that things will be in certain departments time-stamped by the end of the day. So just trying to as much as possible make things easy for the public, but also minimize traffic in town hall and set up things for appointments. The bulky waste site we'll be talking a little bit later in the meeting, and that's been open for residents only the last couple of weeks. We are going to allow commercial contractors, landscaping contractors to use it starting June 2nd, which is a Tuesday when they normally open. They're not open on Mondays. And originally we were hoping to do that this week, but given we wanted to have a discussion about fees and get approval from this board on that, we wanted to launch that when we had the new fee structure in place. We're going through a process now. We've got senior staff meetings set up to talk about operational issues, capital spending, priorities for 2021, and also cost savings that we might have seen over the last 8 to 10 weeks. And I hope to bring that to this board. And I know some of you had requested an update on rethinking the budget and priorities this year. And I hope to bring that to this board in early June. But I'm trying to go through and meet with each senior staff member, and I set out some guidance about what they should come back with. Part of that is also looking at how they can be more efficient in their operations, how they can make their operations more user-friendly for remote access, and also how they can, I call digitization of their offices more. We still have a lot of paper in town hall, and I'm finding that it was kind of a low priority over the last many years to, get things stored electronically. And then there's also some barriers in terms of what the state requires. So we're working through all that and potentially making that a bigger priority, because that will make things more accessible to the public remotely. And also we'll get rid of a lot of unnecessary file cabinets at the town campus. So that's going to be part of our discussions. And then we've been working on assisting businesses on reopening plans, and we'll talk a little bit more about that too. in my update, as well as when Sam and Trent join us on the discussion about kind of how that's working and what our plan is going to be going forward. Beach and Rec, just highlighting again what presented before. Stickers will be required starting June 20th. We've had well over 1,000, actually. This number is probably quite old in terms of mail-in applications for beach stickers. And I was told by the gates this weekend that more and more people now have their sticker. So they're seeing more of that and less of the need for other resident identification. In-person sales at the Surf Club office started this week. So I guess actually today was the first day. So I haven't gone down yet to see how that's all working. I'd hope to get an update from Scott to see if we had anybody show up. But they've got a setup there with kind of creating a safe environment to purchase your beach sticker at the office. And then we are still targeting to have online sales. We're doing a little mini pilot program here over the next 10 days with a small group to make sure it's all up and running. And basically you're going to just be purchasing it online and using the same software that you purchase other Beach and Rec programs, and then the sticker just gets mailed to you. So, but that should be hopefully up and running by June 15th so that people can buy them that way rather than having to mail in an application form. And then programming, we spent quite a bit of time looking at what our programming structure can be. I think we came up with a plan that probably works. And so I'm hoping to allow enrollment starting June 1st in our summer program. And none of these programs would start till the end of June and roll into July and August. It's a little concerning because we were hoping to have more guidance from the state about what these programs can look at like. And then if you look at what other towns are doing, it's all over the map. Some are, going whole hog with programming. Others are offering little to nothing. And so we're trying to find a balance here that keeps things safe. And so our programming has been reviewed by our health director. So we hope to finalize that by the end of this week, and then it would go live on the Beach and Rec website next Monday. And then events, still need to make some decisions on the summer concert series, which we postponed that already. And then we've been looking at having drive-in movies at the Surf Club. And so I think this week I'm scheduled to hear kind of what the proposal would be for that and how it would work and when we would offer it and what the cost would be. But I know a lot of communities are offering these types of things because people will be in their cars, and it's just another kind of fun way to enjoy the summer and do something different and bring your family with you. So that's kind of on what's going on in terms of town hall, my update. I do have some stuff on really on reopening, and I think I'll save that to item number 6 on the agenda to talk a little bit more about how we're reviewing operational plans and everything from a reopening standpoint. So next item on the agenda is the liaison reports. So does any board members want to provide any updates?
Peggy, I'll jump in. Our Government Studies Committee, we're going to be hearing from tonight. They have been started meeting again. Our Island Avenue Study Group has started meeting again, and I understand they're going to be presenting at our next Selectmen's meeting on June 8th. The Board of Police Commissioners met last week and spent a good amount of time preparing for the Memorial Day holiday and dealing with vehicular traffic and bicycle traffic and pedestrian traffic. And finally, our pension committee met last week, and I'd love to tell you they were thrilled with the performance results of our investments, but I think overall the pension committee was pleased with how our investment strategy has weathered the storm of what's going on the stock market and other investments.
Okay, great. And any major changes that they're recommending to do to the portfolio, or is it just more tweaking?
Peggy, the pension committee's investment strategy is a long-term strategy measured in decades because of the nature of a pension plan. And so the quarter-to-quarter ups and downs don't affect our long-term strategy. We made very, very minor adjustments at the meeting last week.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody else? I don't know, Bruce, do you
I'll
have?
jump in. The Ambulance Association received their PPP money, so they're beginning to apply
Awesome.
that to their allowed operating expenses and, of course, their payroll. So I was glad to hear that they received that. That's on top of the previous grant, rather small grant, but still, it was something. It was about $20,000 to help defray.
What was the total in PPP that they got, Bruce?
Good question. I don't have that number in front of me. But 2.5 months of payroll.
Wow,
So
significant.
yeah, and I think helps. It helps them in that it can take a little burden off the town right now. So
Great. Certainly, they've been one of the more active organizations in town, obviously, these last few months, so.
Has the library gotten theirs? Does anyone know?
I hadn't heard. I've not heard that. It's a good
Okay.
question. I'll ask them, Aaron. I'm the liaison, so I guess in theory I should know, but I have not heard.
Any other updates?
I have a couple, if I can pull them up here. Of course, my email's not working right now. Board of Ed met on the 19th of the month, and some nice awards for students were discussed in the agenda. So there were 2 CABE Student Leadership Awards. One is given out for the DHHS students, and then one for the Polson students. So the students and the families were there. So there were 2 awards at each school level. So the 4 students that were awarded in total were Jackie Sandor and Isaac Lerner for DHHS, and then for Polson, Mary Claire Pantano, and then Trip Rizzo for Polson. So that was nice. There was even some Zoom photos taken as well. So it was a pretty cool, energizing moment, I think, for all parties involved. And I think everybody's heard there is a interim superintendent that has been hired. So that is now official. And I also then had the Madison Youth and Family meeting on the 12th. So that was right after our last Board of Selectmen meeting. And they were just really getting up and running. It was their first meeting. And I think, the student report is really what hit me, I think, the most, with just the level of stress that is hitting our students as they're dealing with online learning, especially at the high school levels. And I'm assuming it probably ripples down every level, but it just sort of, hit me. I hear it in my own house, but hearing it directly from other students in this conversation during the meeting was pretty powerful. And I know there's, a lot of conversations then ensue as a result of that, bringing it back to the Board of Education and having those direct conversations. So it was good. And then I know the library, I was just trying to pull this up now from Graham. I think we're in the window right now. That's not letting me bring it up. I don't know why. They're at 98% of the build, I think, on time, on budget, still targeting a 7/1 opening. So pretty exciting. So the library is going well. And if you haven't gone down and taken a peek at it, please do. It looks amazing.
Have they put together kind of a plan for their opening based on, the guidance that we're having and the environment that we're in?
Discussions have been had. I don't think they've decided exactly the format yet, but I'll get that to you guys so that we're all in the loop on what's going on there. I think there was a discussion of more of a soft opening, and then waiting for the bigger opening maybe to happen in more the September timeframe. But I was able to get my phone up here. So just a heads up on the build too. They're trying to get the CO, and a few remaining issues to close out. The furniture is at 90% in the building. They're currently installing technology and equipment in the next few weeks. So a lot's happening.
Do you know how the fundraiser did, Scott?
I don't. So I guess I have a bunch of
Sorry.
follow-ups at the
I know, I
library,
don't
don't
mean to
I?
keep putting you on the spot. I'm just.
That's okay. It's what we're supposed to do, right? It's all good.
I have just two quick updates. So the senior commission met for the first time in a while, a couple weeks ago. So it really was more about just getting everyone up to speed on the activities and what's been going on. And then planning and zoning had a public hearing last week on the application for Old Toll Road and in North Madison and the General's residence. Both are continued.
The general's residence
What?
passed, right? That's what I heard, 8-1.
Oh, that, you know what? I don't know that, Scott. So you're getting me back.
Look
because,
at that, touche.
Because at 10 o'clock, I went to sleep. I was done at 10:30.
Yeah, I heard, I spoke to Ron Clark earlier today and he said it was, yeah, late one, like till midnight or something like that, but it was an 8-1 vote. So
Yeah.
it did pass.
Okay, thanks. The other one is continued.
Okay, great. Any other updates? All right, well, let's move on to citizens' comments. Lauren, do we have any citizens' comments?
Yep, so there is one, and just before I allow them to speak, for anyone else who is new to the Board of Selectmen or the Zoom meeting platform, if you would like to give public comment, you can do so by raising your hand in the panelist field, and then I will allow you to speak. The first comment is from Bill Stableford. Bill, when you're ready, unmute yourself and state your address, and we'll get you going.
You hear me, Lauren?
We can hear you.
Okay, Bill Stableford, 4 Hampshire Road. Good evening, everyone. Couple things. First of all, I want to offer my sincere commendations to all the town officials who arranged for the proactive actions down along Middle Beach Road and the Surf Club. I ride my bike down there frequently. I was at the Surf Club 3 out of 4 days this weekend. The police presence was very noticeable, very helpful. I stop and talk to the police officers. So Chief Drum, congratulations to him. Peggy, you for your proactive thinking on this. And of course, the Beach and Rec Commission and Scott. And the signage on the roads, everything worked perfectly. And of course, the weather meant that the crowds did not materialize. At one point on Monday, there was nobody on the beach at the Surf Club on noon. But anyway, that was all very impressive and a lot of advanced planning paid off. So thank you all for that. Scott Murphy, I can answer some of your questions about the library if you like.
Oh, good. Look at that, Bill.
Development.
Thank you. Real-time info to Aaron.
We have in fact reached our goal for annual operation expense funding. So for the year
Awesome.
2019-20, we just recently met our goal for fundraising for the operating expenses. Apparently there's a building committee tonight and trying to get the CO. There seems to be a difficulty along the entryway on the Boston Post Road side. There's some grading issues there that need to be looked at. And the capital fundraising, we've reached everything but about $200,000. So, and that looks good, hopefully by the end of the calendar year. So anyway, I was really impressed with how the town operated along Middle Beach Road and the beaches. It worked very well. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. Any other citizens' comments?
No one else has their hand raised.
Okay, there's a chance at the end of the meeting, so we'll go back. And next item on the agenda is the COVID response and town operations update following Memorial Day holiday weekend. So perfect lead in from Bill with our emergency management director, Sam DeBura, and our health director, Trent Joseph, and then Joe Race from the police department. Unfortunately, Jack Drum could not be here tonight, so Joe is a perfect surrogate for him. So I thought maybe what I'll do real quick is just, I just wanted to do a brief overview of kind of the decision-making process, because I know there's a lot of changes going on in operations for town government, and we're trying to react and be proactive in some situations, or make changes based on directives that come down from the state. And so a lot of the, let me just find my document again. It's right here. You know, a lot of the people that'll be joining us now in the call are part of that discussion process usually. And so, whoops, let me go to the slide. So kind of when we talk about our approval process, it's because we are under a state of emergency that any type of activities that would require town approval under emergency situation, originally pre-phase 1, so to speak, before the governor rolled out his kind of reopening Connecticut plan, we basically had different groups submit plans to emergency operations team. And there was, to be honest, not that much going on, because in August and May, most of our activities kind of go full board in over the summer months. And we have kind of a core group that includes myself, Sam DeBura, and Trent Joseph, and then oftentimes Jack Drum if it involves public safety. And then we pull in other people, for example, Scott Erskine, where we've talked about the beaches and relevant things in town. So, and, you know, usually a proposal was made, we would review it, make comments, adjustments, and you know, agree of what would make sense and be suitable to present to the community that we would consider safe under the emergency. When the governor rolled out its phasing program in early May, and then really didn't give a lot of specifics to that until the week before May 20th, he also issued an executive order stating how that approval process was going to work. And so the businesses now that opened up as of May 20th, they're not required an inspection by town government. It's a self-certification process. And then they provided all these guidelines about what their stores needed to look like, what was allowed from a restaurant standpoint. And then there was 2 kind of group people that were deemed to be responsible for questions and complaints. And one would be the health director, who would be responsible for overseeing those businesses he already has regulatory authority for, which is restaurants, daycares, grocery stores, traditional things. And then there was this other category of things that normally the health director wouldn't cover, and that was non-grocery retail and office. Those are the 2 other areas that were allowed to be open under May 20th. And so the town needed to basically appoint somebody to be that point person. And so we recently named our building inspector to be that point person. And so we kind of went through an internal vetting and decided that that made the most sense. He also issued, as part of that executive order, waiving a lot of zoning requirements and things that normally, you know, permitting that might have been required. There was a lot of specifics about what was allowed and what was not allowed. So that's kind of how phase 1 has worked through. And then our emergency operations team kind of just has been providing input and guidance and trying to make decisions based on what came down from the state for that phase 1. Now we're actually starting to get a lot of inquiries about phase 2, because now they were a little bit ahead of the game this time. The state actually issued a month in advance what phase 2 could look like. So that includes a wide range of things here in Madison: summer camps, gyms, sports, pools, movie theaters, all these different things. They just named them without providing any kind of rules of protocol or rules of operant, you know, how to operate these businesses yet. So we're waiting for that. But we've been getting a lot of inquiries. And so our hope is, with this long-term recovery committee process that we've set up, it'll help funnel some of these different inquiries that we're getting now, because daily now people are looking to that June 20th date and beyond, and wanting to make plans and want to understand how they can open up and what the guidelines would be. So we're kind of in that process now, and we're hoping to take this and transition some of this to the long-term recovery committee process, because that's a way to get feedback from the public up to the emergency operations team. So I just wanted to kind of walk through that process, because we've had a lot of questions about it. I was on several calls today, even about youth sports. I got some inquiries about a charity sale that wanted to happen later this month, and so, so people can understand what that process would be. And so I'll turn it now to include Trent and Sam, who are, and Captain Race, who are all a part of that decision-making process. So stop sharing that. So there's more room on the screen. But anyways, I just wanted to kind of launch that and address some of the questions the public might have on that approval process. So I thought maybe, Sam, if you want to talk a little bit more about the process, and then is Captain Race on?
No, he's not.
Okay. Okay, but maybe Sam, you can just talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that Bill mentioned, that the police commission had approved, and that we were launching in terms of trying to address a lot of the complaints and issues at the beaches and along the shoreline roads.
So yeah, so we did receive the 4 emails and stuff complaining about Middle Beach Road and the social distancing on the beaches and stuff. So we added extra signs, and the chief put on extra patrols, try to curb some of the complaints. And it seemed to work out. Fortunately, the weather kind of helped us a little bit. There was really only one really good day out of the weekend. As far as call wise, our busiest day was actually Friday. We did as many calls on Friday as, between fire and EMS as we did over the whole weekend. And I believe on Sunday night, the ambulance did go to the state park for one intoxicated person. So the process is, we take our information from the state and try to make the best decisions that we can. We are still operating under state of emergency, and we're operating under the local emergency operations plan. And just because the sun's out and it's a nice day and everything else doesn't mean the threat is gone. This is a totally different animal than our normal natural disasters, where we can see where our deficiencies are and what's, what all the damage is. We can't see this thing, and we don't know where it is. And, as people try to get back to their normal lives, this thing could have a resurgence and take off, and we could be, back more, back from where we started from, or, even worse. So it's very important that, everybody, I know everybody's itchy. Listen, nobody wants this thing over more than I do. I can tell you that right now. But we need to be patient. We need to stay the course. And, we need to follow what the state's putting out. They're trying to do this incrementally slowly so that we don't have any back steps. We just want to keep moving forward. We don't want to go backwards. And Peggy was right about the guidance. The guidance sometimes is slow coming from the state. We don't want to put information out there before the state does and then have it contradict. So we try to wait for the state to come up with the guidance, so that we're in line. The worst thing that we could have out there is 2 different types of information, right? Because it only makes confusion. And I know with this whole last executive order, there's a lot of confusion. They tried to explain a lot of it, which I think, we got most of it, but there's still a lot of questions of why can you have a lot of people on the beaches and we can't have, outside training activities and stuff like that. So we're working through those. We're trying to get people the best answers as we can, and still be in line with the state guidelines. So any questions, comments?
I don't know, Trent, do you want to talk a little bit about, kind of the thought process as we go through these things? I think one of the things we do try to do is reach out and see what other towns are. Each of, Sam and Trent both participate in calls of other communities within the state of Connecticut. So they share a lot of information, they brainstorm with each other, try to get good ideas, try to make good decisions, and learn from other communities as well. Trent, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, Peggy. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to add, I pretty much echo the same thing Sam just said. You know, as flexible as we try to be sometimes, we got to go within the confines of, you know, what DECD and DPH puts out to us. And, you know, we try to have some sense of uniformity across town lines. And I'm keeping close communication with those towns and cities. And whatever establishments that, you know, I currently regulate or license, you know, they're provided updates routinely on how to, you know, slow the spread of COVID and protect themselves, the staff and the public. And, you know, we'll continue to provide updates to the town as things move forward.
And I think, you know, in terms of, I know we labeled this as Memorial Day weekend. I think we saw this as a little bit of a, you know, testing ground for, you know, having residents only on the beaches, the staffing. Friday, unfortunately, caught us off guard because we had not planned on staffing. We don't plan on having staffing on Fridays at the gate guards. We normally haven't done that in the past. And Hammonasset closed on a Friday, which shows you how different patterns are, because that rarely ever happens. You know, it's Saturday and Sundays that they close early. It's not on a Friday. So, you know, so we kind of learned a little bit from that. You know, we were also experimenting with signage to make sure that those people who do get turned away from Hammonasset don't just pile up and back up the surf club. You know, they're going to be turned away. And so we're trying to improve the signage to let people know that, you know, the beaches are for residents only on the weekends. So we're continued feedback is always welcome, and we're continue to, you know, adapt as we move forward.
I don't know who to ask my question to, but have we worked out communication relationships with the state in terms of knowing when they're going to close Hamo?
Yes. So Hammonasset notifies our dispatch center, and they've set up a way to, the same way we do for all our emergency calls. So they put a page out and it notifies all the agencies at the same time.
And
I think they closed that at Friday. I think they closed the parking lot at 10:30 in the morning. That's how busy they were.
And that's at 100%, Sam? Are they still doing 100%?
I don't know what they dropped their capacity to, but I know it's not 100%.
I think it's 50%.
Yeah, it's about 50.
Well, and I think the other piece is getting it from the dispatch and the police also to the people on the ground at the beaches, and having our beach staff. And so we've been discussing, because, you know, the staff changes depending on working that day. So we're trying to streamline that a little bit so that Scott Erskine's teams gets a head up. That way they're ready to know if there's going to be influx of cars. The other thing I'm having them do at the gates is actually track who they turn away. So before we never really did that. And so they're actually taking down statistics on when they turn a car away. They're just doing a tick sheet, you know, of how many cars we actually turn away. And I think it'll be a helpful data point for us in the future about, you know, that overflow. So we kind of have some data to support it.
Is this being done, Peggy, at West Wharf too? I noticed on, I forget when it was, but there were a lot of cars. It looks like the beach hotel had blocked off their parking lots because people were trying to park in there because no one's using the hotel right now. Are there efforts down there as well? I know that's a little bit more difficult to monitor.
Yeah, they actually did. I'm just looking at, they did all 3 beaches. He texted it to me. And actually it wasn't too many. On Sunday, which is the only nice day, they turned away 67 cars at the Surf Club, 27 at West Wharf, and 23 at East Wharf, what they turned away. The interesting thing about people like to, you know, they go to, what I found out what was happening was that people would go down, get turned away at West Wharf, and then they'd go to Kriski's and order food or drink, find a parking spot there, and then just walk down and use the beach, which were, you know, people can walk on. So they found a way. That parking situation is going to be more of an issue as the hotel opens up. And those are 2-hour time limits. And I actually spoke to one of the officers down there about that, how we might have to start once it gets busy, because Sunday it really wasn't that busy. We're going to have to actually start picking up enforcement on those 2-hour spots. So, and luckily now we have a kind of a corridor of police that are just patrolling that area. So it might be easier to start enforcing that.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Trent or for Sam?
I guess
Okay, and
just
I think-
maybe a thank you to the two of them is warranted, and Peggy, maybe for you too, but you know, for Sam and for Trent, I have the privilege of sitting in on the EOC meetings. They've been 3 times a week. Now they're scaled down to 2 times a week. Sam runs a tight ship. You know, these are well-organized meetings with every leader in town. You know, captains of all the firehouses, the police chief, the fire chiefs, you know, Sam and his team, the health team. It is very, very well run, and these guys are putting in a ton of time, providing input then back to Peggy to help make decisions in a collaborative effort. So I you know, just a huge thank you to all the work you guys are putting in to ensure that the public remains safe.
Oh, thank you. And Sam does an excellent job running those meetings. His are much faster than mine. That's for
He runs a tight ship. Sam, can you work on Peggy?
I'll try to give her some pointers.
I'm the
She's-
politician though, see, so
she's-
I have to be a windbag.
She's nicer than I am.
I just blame you. Okay,
Is
all
there-
right,
is
great.
it- Has there been a sense from the public about, you know, in response to the decisions that have been made or what's been set up? I mean, has there been, you know, strong opinions, not isolated opinions about different things, but, you know, overall, has there been, you know, what are you all hearing from the public in response to the decisions that you've made?
You want to start, Sam?
Well, yeah,
I mean,
I'll-
what are the hot issues? I
Go
know
ahead.
we could probably be here
Go
for a
ahead.
while.
Go ahead, Trent.
Well, that's a good question, Aaron. Some of the questions are somewhat aligned with just how flexible the town can be with some of the sector rules that were put out. I know a big staple in the process was the rescheduling of the cosmetology establishments, so that
Yeah.
kind of slowed the process down for planning. A lot of establishments were preparing for that. I am getting some you know, some calls about some of the restaurants and just tightening up some of their control measures with social distancing. You know, a couple of our establishments do get busy over the weekend, so some of those, yeah. You know, you would routinely get, you know, the wearing of masks in public amongst groups, but you know, some of that we can't always comb through. But that's
Right.
pretty much all it is. You know, nothing other than that. Sam, you might be able to speak a little bit more of some of the complaints we've gotten. I mean, we've been doing a lot of responding to things, and it's not always enforcement. It's sometimes 50% education, and that's kind of what it's been, at least from my department.
Yeah, and I really don't think there's been a lot of complaints. I think people are just eager to get back to doing what they do. You know, they want to get their business open. They want to, you know, go get the haircut and stuff like that. So we're trying to give them the best guidance that we can. You know, obviously, you know, we're handcuffed by what the state's, you know, putting forth. So, you know, and I was very disappointed that they pulled the pin on the barbershops myself. I need a haircut myself, and I'm not out to go out to Walmart and buy some trimmers and try it, but it might come to that. But it's really you know, a lot of questions on how they can get, you know, their business back up and running. So you know, we feel a lot of those questions.
Yeah, we're getting questions through that reopenmadisonct.org type questions. And then any kind of complaints that go into the police department, they actually have done, which I think is great. They've started a complaint log basically about public behavior, because you are getting people calling, complaining about kids riding their bikes without masks, people not social distancing on the beach. So those are coming in quite regularly. And they either might go into the police department because people are looking for some sort of, action item to be taken on that. I get those types of complaints. And, so you get, I get kind of a trickle every day of email. Although it's interesting because we know the farmer's market was a hot topic on social media, but I had, I think, 2 emails about the farmer's market. People were wondering about that last week or over the weekend. So there's things come in from all different channels. And so I think we just try to keep our ears to the ground, and address them when we can and make changes if we feel we have to. And if it's the right thing to do, we'll make adjustments. I think this complaint log from the police will be good because it will give us a better sense of how often those calls are coming in and what they're doing to respond to them. Because the reality is you can't send police officers down to surf club all the time. But now that we have the increased patrols and we put a lot of signage out, just friendly reminder signage about what the expected kind of behavior is, down there. I think that will help things go a long way. But it's tough. People want to go back to normal now. And I think it's going to be a challenging couple of weeks for sure. I think we're all hoping that June 20th. Yeah. And I think June 20th, I think we're all hoping that this strict social distancing and the mask wearing we might be able to lighten up a little bit, but we've got a couple weeks to go. We got to see how things go with this virus. We're probably already going to be seeing an increase. I think we haven't seen an increase in positive cases. We saw a slight uptick in hospitalizations. And if that trend continues to escalate, maybe June 20th won't be a big change from where we are now. So does that help understand a little bit?
Yeah,
Peggy, it sounds to me like the residents of Madison are cooperating with town officials in following the policies that are designed to keep everybody safe. Do you have any way of comparing us to other towns? Do you have any insight as to how our residents are doing compared to other towns?
We're far better.
I think that on the municipal calls we have every week with the governor, you get an opportunity to hear questions and issues that other first select people bring up on the calls. And that gives you a sense of, and you hear a common theme usually. Like we heard a lot of common things when this first started. So then the governor started issuing directives to address those issues. So I think when you hear, a pattern of behavior, you recognize you're not alone, that your communities are all struggling with this. And I think we're all just tired now. It's been 10 weeks, of living through this. And so people's nerves are frayed and they want to just get back to their normal lives. So I think the complaint piece might increase more, and it'll be, some people wanting us to be strict and enforce, and other people wanting us to relax and loosen up. Why do we have to do this anymore? It doesn't make any sense. And then we'll have the groups that are very concerned about people not wearing masks, not being respectful, not social distancing. So it's just going to be a continuous process, I think, until we get out of this whole situation. A long haul, we'll just say that. So are we good moving on to item 7? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, well, thank you very much, Trent and Sam.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So moving on, the next is an update from our government study committee. So I think we have Bob Polito will be joining us, who's the chair.
There are a few members. Just give me one moment to get them moved over.
Okay. Just a reminder to the public that we appointed this committee, I think in January, and this is an early stage committee that ultimately will lead to a charter revision committee. This one is meant to be broader, just to explore different forms of town government and how, look at how other communities are and what issues we have with our own town government. And I will say that now, having gone through a pandemic, you kind of realize the pros and cons of a town meeting form of government. So a lot of lessons to be learned, at least through this whole emergency situation.
So we have 4 members from the Government Study Committee on right now, and if you will all unmute yourselves, you can also share your video so that the public is able to see you.
Great.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Peggy, thank you. Thank you very much. I believe I've met all the Board of Selectmen except for Bruce. So Bruce, nice to meet you over Zoom. And nice to see that everybody's healthy. And Peggy, thank you for all the work you're doing in the town. The updates are very helpful, and I've heard from my neighbors and friends. So all of you are doing a great job. So thank you very much. What I'd like to do is just give you a quick update on all the work that our committee has done. And I also want to shout out to Lauren, who has helped us and guided us through the technology and the strategy, and she's done a great job. So thank you for that. Lauren, can we see the deck for
Yep.
June 1? Okay.
Give me 1 second.
Okay. What I thought I'd do is show you the deck that we're going to show to the public on June 1. We've already had one public forum on May 18th. And I thought this would be it's just a few slides, won't take long. So they're the members of the committee. We have Jean Ferris, Lauren Noble, Leo White, Peter Ruse, Robert Reinhardt, and me. And special advisor is Gus Horvath. So what a great group of folks. Really into it, very smart. And we've all kind of gelled really well. So it's a good group of people. The committee charge. We're trying to adhere to that. Sometimes we start talking about other things, but we're true to the charge. Reviewing best practices of other municipalities. We've already held one workshop. We're also assembling our questionnaires for public opinion for not only town employees, but the electorate as well. We're also consulting with the appropriate town employees and other agencies and other consultants to help us with the recommendation. So next page. So here's what we've done, which is seemingly a lot of work. So we've met with Wallingford, Guilford, Cheshire, North Branford, Clinton, and Fairfield. And I met with the superintendent of schools prior to the resignation, the Board of Education chair, P&Z commission chair. We have to reschedule the Board of Finance because of COVID. And we've met with former Madison First Selectmen. I believe there are 4 of them we've met with, very helpful. And we still would like to meet with Branford, Glastonbury, Simsbury, maybe also Waterford, and I think Darien, for different reasons. And then we also still have to get to the Board of Finance chair as well. So you know the different forms of government based on state statute. We don't have to go through that, but this is what I want the town, the people to see in the public forum, that they understand the limitations. Actually, it's quite broad if you think about it. After you read all this, you can do a lot of different things as a form of government, but they're obviously maintaining state statute. So next page, that just goes on again on the state statute. And next page, Lauren, please. So when we had our May 18th public commentary, a few things popped out from the people that did give us their opinion. Video conferencing, Zoom may increase electoral participation. That's a given. Two people in particular said it's time for a new form of government. We have a larger constituency now. Two people recommended RTMs with a town manager form of government. People also talked about 2-year electoral cycles being too short. I'd like to go to a 4-year term. One comment was go to an RTM form of government with 1/3 Democrat, 1/3 Republican, and 1/3 unaffiliated, kind of a hybrid system there. People are thinking that the town manager removes politics from the town. We should be advertising for political participation was another comment. So some other things are coming out as we go forward is people are talking about when we elect a first selectman, the person who that first selectman has won against is now on the board of selectmen. And so it's kind of awkward having to work with the person you might have beaten in the election. And that came out a few different times in some commentary. Don't know the answer to that just yet, but just some of the commentary that's out there. So we are preparing a townwide questionnaire and to solicit for further opinion. And we're going to do our public hearing again on June 1st. And we've advertised it. It's been in the local papers. And we're hoping to get more participation on June 1st. And I invite you all as well to come and join us if you have the time and to help guide us, give us some of your own opinions. We do think that your opinions are very valuable, as well as the town employees and the town electorate in particular. We're hoping that we do get, when we do the questionnaire, that we do get a good amount of the town, giving us their opinion. We do believe that the town employees will be kind of vocal in what they see and what they recommend. And I think that would be very interesting. And they have different ways of communicating with the committee as well. So that's what we've done in a nutshell. It's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of time. We meet every Monday. We had 5 or 6 weeks off during the COVID epidemic, and we got back into it in late March. But we meet every Monday, 6 o'clock. What I wanted to talk to the committee tonight about is a timeline of when we can get our final product to you. I think it's going to be a little extended. We should have had it to you, I think, like next week, our original plan. But with the shutdown and we were off, we're probably looking more like July, I would think, if that's okay with you folks. But we'll take any questions you might have.
Well, just real quickly, first of all, I want to thank you so much for all your hard work and your persistence and kind of moving this forward despite the environment that we're in and the pandemic and the state of emergency. And I know it was a challenge to get going initially. And you were patient because I know you were eager to get going soon.
Yeah.
So I thank you for all that hard work. I'll leave it to the board discussion about the timeline. I think certainly, obviously July, if you even need a little bit more time beyond that. One thing I think would be helpful to include in this is re-interviewing some people now, especially at the board level and the first selectman level, or currently serving on boards, about the experience in this state of emergency. I certainly can provide a lot of perspective about some of the pros and cons of our government and structure. There's a lot of things in the charter that we have, and this is maybe left for more of a charter review discussion, as it moves forward. about how we conduct meetings, and because right now this is all under state of emergency. We never could have held this meeting before. And so and this is all just going to stay in place till September 9th, I think, is the governor's declaration. And so then we might have to go back to the old way of doing things, which I think in some ways would be not a good thing. I mean, the participation rate has not been high so far online, but I think as this takes hold in the community, it will start to grow and people will adapt more to this in terms of how to function, right? From a board standpoint and a town meeting standpoint. We haven't cracked the town meeting code yet under social distancing.
Right.
But anyway, so that's a thought that I think that there should be a specific focus on lessons learned, post-pandemic about government structure.
Although
Yeah.
if I could just add, there were over 90 people were present at the P&Z meeting last week.
Wow.
A lot of people.
That's
Right.
A lot of people. Yeah.
I mean, there were two, fairly hot topics, but still, it shows you that people are able to access.
Right.
Despite any, because technology can be.
Yeah, it's not a barrier.
Right.
Yeah.
This could be a new normal. Prior to the pandemic, we talked to a lot of people, and there's a pretty big opinion on a town manager form of government. And you might have seen the quote in the paper that I didn't know it was going to be in the paper, but it got in the paper, that you take someone, and Peggy, I use you as an example. You get into office in November, and in January, all heck breaks loose. And February, all heck breaks loose. Your background, as smart as you could be, is who knows how to operate a town during a pandemic? No one does. You're flying the airplane as you're building it. And a town manager, after we've reformed and started talking to more people, the town manager seems to be a very popular form of management, in that person has a lot of skills with managing a pandemic, or managing a crisis, whether it's a hurricane, tornado, or earthquake, or whatever. Add a pandemic to it now, and that manager can help a board, a council, an RTM, whatever, manage through that and provide some stability for the townspeople, the electorate, and so that's just some of the things that we're seeing from some of the opinions that we're hearing. So to your point,
the post-pandemic,
right, and it's also it's also a question of governance as well. So I'm the chairman of a very large not-for-profit, and I sat in on a couple of governance webinars, and I'm thinking of changing our own bylaws where I can give the CEO some emergency powers and not have to convene a board to make a decision in an emergency, but maybe an executive committee level. So equate that to a board of selectmen. There are certain things that we might want to look at in an emergency kind of thing. So I just throw that out there.
Well, I think that this emergency highlights, the fact that the first selectman's job is you wear the hat of running the town,
right? And
you wear the hat of the ceremonial head of the town, and then you also wear the legislative body hat, leading that. And so this I have to blame on Al Goldberg. He said, well, the town just runs itself generally. You won't have to worry about the operations of the town, really. Everybody knows what they're doing. It's always run the same way. Nothing changes. And so you can focus on the policy issues, on the ceremonial issues, on all the political stuff and the big picture capital things. But then you have something like this, a crisis erupt, where 90% of the job is operational now, where we're making decisions about, do we open the beaches, and, do we open the senior center, and do our employees wear masks, So it has been, and we'll have more opportunity to talk offline, so I won't take up the discussion with that, but we'll certainly I can share many views with you.
Yep.
Bob, I just had a quick question for you. How many people attended the public hearing public forum you had?
Yeah, we had 4. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Disappointing. Um, Gus got on again, and I love when he does because he just gushes information. And I'd love to just sit down and have a cup of coffee with him because all the things you can learn from him. But we only had 3 others, unfortunately, and but they were good, and we got a lot out of it. We were going to talk about it tonight. We didn't. We're going to get to it next week, but some really good opinions, and I get the sense if you just take 4 as a representation of the town, there is a desire for change. So we'll see where that goes.
Well, I think that you raised an issue, and something I've learned throughout this process is getting the information out there to people. For example, we didn't necessarily push on social media or do a lot of raising awareness of your public forum. And I think a good example is, I'm reaching right now because of the declaration of emergency. I send out these robocalls, and it's going to like 13,000 phones.
Right.
And the power of that is when I put out a comment about pet food for people, that the next day the senior center was overrun with donations of pet food. Another time I said, if you want to get your beach pass and don't have a printer, show up at the senior center. There'll be a pile of them there available. Now, no one thought anybody was going to take them, and they had like 150 gone within a couple of hours. So the ability to reach people is so huge, right? And they're listening. And obviously this is a state of emergency type of situation. So it's difficult to maintain this going forward. But I think if we think about a communication strategy and how we continue to reach people, we're looking at, like, for example, maybe investing in an app so that you can send out alerts to people. It's part of actually one of our software platforms here in town government. And so a way to get to a lot of people quickly with alerts about public forums or this or whatever. So things to think about, but I think you will get more participation if we make an effort. So we should be more in line. Lauren's very good about making sure we get, I know we did a push, I think, email, but.
No, I actually, it went out email, newsletter, calendar email, town Facebook, Office of the First Selectman's Facebook page.
Yeah.
So,
other than me,
I guess I was too. I didn't even.
It did go out.
Other than
Several
a sandwich board with me on the corner of the surf club,
Yeah. Or just say beach in the headline, and then everybody will pay attention to it.
Very true.
That are band uniforms.
So
I have a question, Bob.
Sure.
One of the ideas that, or the topics that I would hope that you folks would take up would be the relationship between the elected boards, especially the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen. The charter talks at length about how the two boards, or that the two boards shall work together, but really doesn't talk about how, the nature of that relationship.
A little gray.
And it seems like there's room for improvement. I think we're pretty fortunate that even in difficult times, the boards work well together. But I think it would be simpler if we had some of these relationships spelled out a little bit better.
Okay. You know, some of the towns that we did interview don't have a board of selectmen,
Right.
and it's left to a board of, it's left to a.
They don't have a board of finance. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what did I say? Did I say selectmen?
Right. So if they have a town manager, there is no board of finance.
I thought Bob was putting us out of a job here.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, no. So you know, they have a, like, for instance, I think it was Cheshire, town manager, town council, form of government, no board of finance. They have this 10-year capital budget that's about that thick on his desk, and he knows every page in it just about. So, you know, there's, you know, but you know, politically, try to get rid of a board of finance in a town. You know, that's probably, you know, a real bridge too far, I think. So,
Well,
but increment.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Hi, this is Bob Reinhardt. What's the specific problem between the Board of Selectmen and Finance that you're trying to solve?
I wouldn't call it a
Not a problem.
It's a lack of structure.
I think the language in the charter too leaves things rather gray. I think
What
in
would you
terms of
rather have
decision
today?
making.
I'm
What's
just
that?
exploring, like, I'm trying to understand, you just saying that the lack of cooperation is not there.
No,
Or it's not as good as it could be.
no, actually, I think a really good operation. There's just not a lot of structure provided for in the charter. There is some awkward language about the Board of Selectmen having responsibility for a particular part of the budget,
Okay.
and then the Board of Finance having responsibility for the same part. So as a matter of fact, the language around the Board of Finance is the budget authority. They have essentially a line item veto on the operating priorities of the town when the Board of Selectmen are the town operators. So in the ideal, the Board of Finance is really, they're charged with responsible and sustainable funding and spending in town.
Not policy making.
But
Right.
but not the
Okay.
operating
Got it.
initiatives.
That lack of structure, is that written in so there's wiggle room for people to operate within, maybe?
Oh, I think you'd have to unbury the people that are behind the language to understand the motive.
Gus will know.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, it may be
I-
worth us just having a more, it's hard to do in a meeting like this, but maybe go have a cup of coffee, smaller group, whatever. But I think picking apart some of these issues, especially as we've lived through them on each one of these boards, may be useful to you guys. So I will leave that with you.
One of the things, though, one of the things that we
He
were
knows.
cautioned about, a little bit cautioned about, is to try to not be overly influenced by, to me, you open it up to everybody that's been there living it or has lived it, because I think that's really important. But we're supposed to be somewhat objective in looking at the forms of government, and given our charge, and I know our charge, can be expanded a little bit, but to really try to get into some of the weeds of this is, I don't know, I guess the confusion, or where I've sort of been going back and forth, is, is this something that, are we supposed to just really be just looking at the forms of government and making recommendations, and then the next Charter Review Commission takes on some of these issues based on our recommendations, or should we be delving into it a little more, a little deeper? I think that's what we struggle with in Bob and Bob.
Yeah.
Two Bobs. We now have three Bobs and two Laurens.
Yeah.
I
maybe
think
we can-
I think it is, to your first point, I think the role is to look at the broader forms of government and make a recommendation. But I think all the work is to put together a list of issues that you would recommend that the Charter Commission address in the charter, because you'll pick up factoids from people, right? Of where things have been a problem. Simple things like virtual meetings, right? Those are formalities that can be changed in the document, later. But you're right. You're not meant to come up with a detailed, this is what the government should look like and the rules that should be in place, and
So we may, who knows, at the end of the day, we may come up with saying, well, here's where we think we should be going. And there are, it's not necessarily, this is the one option. There could be a couple of options. But if it's option one, where we keep the form of government, here's what our recommendation is. Terms, a better defined, as Bruce said, a better defined roles and responsibilities and interaction between the commissions. the Board of Finance. But if we also say, here's another option that we think could work, and it might be, again, we're still looking at, and have been having conversations regarding town manager. And then also RTM, we've unfortunately, because of the fact that we kind of got our knees cut off as everybody else did, we haven't really been able to take that to the next step. But I think that's something we need to explore, whether it's the right option or the wrong option for the town, we don't yet know. But so that's a good point. You may have recommendations within each form. And then it's really for the Charter Review Commission to take the next step.
Right. And lastly, we've been talking a lot about how do we get the electorate to be more participative? How do we get more people active in local town politics when you have Republicans and Democrats, and we have more unaffiliated than any other representation in town? So that's, how do you get the unaffiliated to be more active when they think that they have to go to a different town committee to get nominated or to petition, or so we're looking at that. That's kind of the holy grail of all towns in Connecticut, is how to get more people active in local politics. So
Bob, are you looking, is your committee looking at towns that don't have party representation? Like, in other words, you run not necessarily as a Republican or a Democrat, you just run for a particular seat on the council?
Yeah, who's been very helpful in that is Gus. So he knows all the ins and outs of the different towns, especially in the RTM world, where you can petition, and some towns you need 1% to petition as an unaffiliated. Another town has you need 100 people to sign a petition and you're in as a candidate. So it's all over the place as far as, and I think that's great. That's democracy, and its finest form is your local representation, being how you want to run it, without anyone else telling you how to do that. So yes, Aaron, that's we have seen a lot of that. So.
Okay, well, I appreciate your time and effort.
Yeah, thank you.
If the board is good, we'll look forward to the next update.
Great.
Further conversations.
Thank you.
Yeah,
important
thanks to
stuff.
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thanks to
Appreciate
the
it.
committee.
Good
And
to see
Aaron,
you, Gene.
thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Just realized we have a lot of work to do still. I know it's getting, I knew this was going to be a heavy agenda, but that was great though to get an update from them. The next, I know Ryan has been waiting patiently to give us an update on the Economic Development Commission. So you're still there, Ryan?
Hi, yes.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm here.
Great.
Different room in the house.
I wasn't waiting so patiently, but I am still here. Yes, thanks so much for including us on the agenda tonight. I promise it's not going to take more than 45, 50 minutes or so.
Nice. Well played.
So, before we talk about the COVID implications to our EDC agenda over the last several months, I did want to touch upon one item that we will be bringing forward to the Board of Selectmen sometime, probably in the next couple of meetings. I spoke to Dave Anderson earlier today, and I think we just need to get the language of the policy formulated to bring forward. And this is an update to a policy that the Board of Selectmen approved in May of 2018, so almost exactly 2 years ago. And this is the Town of Madison Assessment Deferral Program, which I think we may rename to the Commercial Property Incremental Tax Deferral Program. It's a little longer, but it's hopefully a bit more informative in terms of what the program does. And for Aaron and Peggy, you weren't on the Board of Selectmen when we brought this forward 2 years ago. And I'm sure Scott and Bruce and Al, you probably remember when we brought this forward. This is to take advantage of a state statute in Connecticut that allows for municipalities to defer incremental tax increases on commercial property to hopefully be a catalyst for development. And so we helped to craft a policy around that to provide some guidelines and quite honestly, to communicate this statute to potential developers to bring forward improvements to our commercial landscape. They're guidelines, so they're certainly not rules. And under state statute, any commercial property owner could bring a request to the Board of Selectmen anyway. Appropriate to the conversation that was last discussed on the agenda, this process requires legislative approval by the town's form of government, which in our case is town meeting. We actually have 2 applications that are waiting on the sidelines right now. And until we have some clarity on how we can move forward with our form of government without the ability to do town meeting right now, they're going to have to sit until that's done. So I wanted to mention that quickly, just in case this comes forward in the next couple of meetings. Happy to take any questions now about this policy. And I think Dave is on too. So if anything gets into the details, I'm sure he can help to answer those questions.
Ryan, the 2 applications that you mentioned, would they be impacted if we did not make changes that you mentioned? I guess we're going to be considering. I mean, as the policy exists today, would they still go through and be okay?
Sure. Yep. Yeah, that's a good question. The policy changes that we're recommending actually help to provide some additional kind of qualifiers to the policy, but no, they wouldn't impact the thing. The one thing that we're trying to actually encourage through the policy update is to engage with the property owners in an appropriate time. So if one aspect of this change, which could have impacted these types of applications, is these projects are at this point underway. Now, they engaged with us prior to their definitive plans in terms of trying to take advantage of this program. But ultimately, we would like the property owners to engage with the town at a certain point in their process, so that we kind of have it underway. And so we looked at a couple other municipalities that have similar policies to help to craft that language. And we went through kind of a working session within EDC over a couple of months to facilitate that.
Ryan, can you just clarify, is it the granting of the tax deferment that requires a town meeting, or is it the changing to the policy?
Both.
Yeah. Well, actually, the policy can just be approved by the Board of Selectmen, but the actual applications need to be approved by town meeting.
Because we didn't have a town meeting the first time we approved it, did we? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I think the town meeting conundrum that, I'm hoping that we're going to get some additional clarity about, because our town meetings, frankly, aren't that well attended, right? They tend to be smaller, and it requires at least 75 attendees before you actually go to vote. But some of the latest directives that might be coming out, it might mean that we would be comfortable having, a town meeting in a social distancing way, so that we could offer that to the public. So we're going to be watching a little bit more closely what comes out of state government in the next couple of weeks, especially I know after they were raising the events up to 50 people in terms of this next June 20th, I think. There was a couple of things in there. It was a little confusing, so we'll have to look to how this is all going to get laid out, but it might provide us some cover in terms of if we wanted to actually hold a town meeting. Probably the earliest would be July, because there's a process to go through that, and then you have to, advertise it and all that other stuff. But hopefully we can get there, which would be nice, because I think there's a lot of, we've managed to address some of the items that were of urgent nature without holding a town meeting. But there's some more routine things that we just need to move forward on. So.
Great. So we'll be bringing that shortly over the next couple of meetings. What has taken a lot of our attention since earlier this year has been the COVID crisis and its economic impact, something that the commission really started looking at very, very closely as soon as this started to unfold. We conducted a survey, a first survey, I think it was the first week of closures, like the 13th or 14th. The results of that survey are on our website. That has been shared pretty widely at this point. What I was hoping to share tonight, and if Lauren, is it easiest if you put it up?
Yep, give me 1 second.
Are some select results from the most recent survey that we conducted, which was which started on May 8th. It ran for a couple of days. This survey, it was done in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Small Business Task Force, which Peggy constituted at the beginning of the crisis. And really what we were hoping to do with the first survey and then with this follow-up is to not only engage the businesses and let them know that we're here, but also to gather information that we could share with the legislative bodies here in the town, as well as economic development groups in the state of Connecticut, and to help to try and connect the major issues that businesses are having with potential resources. So Lauren, if you want to just go to the first one. We had 68 responses. Again, these are all small to medium-sized businesses here in the town. And this is pretty telling, not surprising, but telling that 94% of those respondents had been affected by COVID. The type of business entity, most of them are for-profit businesses. We did have some nonprofits and a couple of associated government agencies respond. This one, in terms of just trying to get an idea of the makeup of the respondents, about 37% of respondents actually own the property that they're in. And this one, of course, is important to us. 75% of these respondents are taxpayers. So we want to listen to everybody, but we certainly want to ensure that we make our taxpayers, their issues be heard. Just in terms of financial resources that these businesses applied for, almost 60% had applied to the Paycheck Protection Program. And as a follow-up to that too, the vast majority of them had been approved and received their funds. Here's some other programs that the respondents applied to. I think the biggest one there is the EIDL. And then in terms of closures, we see that 75% were either fully or partially closed during the crisis. Again, not too surprising. In terms of reopening, it's kind of a mixed bag. And I think that now, when I did this survey, I thought that we may see, probably more people opening on the 20th or right around then. But as I've driven around town over the past couple of weeks, it is a mixed bag still. I think we're still seeing a lot of businesses be very cautious. And I think that the kind of results there, it's a spattering of people that have opened on the 20th, people that plan to open sometime in June. Some people are pushing it out to even July or later in the year. This graph at first was encouraging, but there were quite a few sole proprietors that responded, which skews this a little bit. But of the respondents, 60% did not lay off or furlough anybody. And then of those furloughed workers, we can see more than half were Madison residents. most people filed for unemployment, and some other little tidbits of information there in terms of work share. We certainly have been watching the Madison unemployment numbers. I know that Bruce and I and Eileen have looked at the specific numbers, and we shared them with the Board of Finance as a data point during the budget kind of conversations. I think it is something, though, that we will need to look at beyond this type of survey. But the long-term implications of high unemployment, I think, will affect not only the ability to pay mortgages and taxes, but also to help to support our local businesses as well. So certainly something we're looking at. In terms of the challenges, and I think this is almost the last slide here too. So, but the kind of the big standout, of course, is that revenue and cash flow is a concern and is a challenge at this point. And I think that their second concern, if there maybe not enough customers to support their businesses, is certainly relevant. I think a lot of these businesses probably, I would say probably many of them were kind of just making it when times were pretty good. And now with curbside only and takeout only for restaurants and limited retail opportunities, I think it's a real struggle. The third item there, I think a lot of this has been mitigated at this point with PPE. I know that the chamber helped to facilitate with CBIA distribution of masks recently, and even thermometers. So that was distributed last week. So hopefully that's been kind of mitigated at this point. And then just overall safety of their own health and of their employees. Something on their mind, and I think something that is not to be overlooked too much. Just to wrap up, we had a great kind of outreach program. In terms of I guess this is the final slide here. They're unsure, if this. I'm sorry, they believe almost 68% of respondents believe that the negative impacts of this crisis will go into 2021. So this is not a short-term issue at this point. Yeah, I think we'll make this deck available for folks. Just in closing, we had a great combination of EDC and Board of Selectmen members work together over the Memorial Day holiday weekend to go out and visit. We visited over 20 businesses collectively, which I thought was great. The feedback that folks received and that I received during these meetings was very, very positive. They were happy to see somebody, happy to talk to somebody. It certainly was a great way to take the pulse of these businesses during this crisis. And I think that those conversations will go a long way. So thank you to the Board of Selectmen members that participated in that outreach. I know that it was a volunteer activity and we kind of threw it together quickly. Thanks, Peggy, for putting it together and getting the word out. I think it went a long way. So any questions from anybody?
Yeah, well, thank you. The survey was very helpful, and I appreciate you taking the time to pull that together. Question I have is what is your outreach in those surveys? Like, what do we include as a business? Is it a dentist office? Is it somebody that does legal services? Yeah. A CPA working out of their house, or is it more the traditional kind of brick and mortar businesses that we have in town?
Yeah, it runs the gamut, and I think that we'll make sure you have a link to the full survey results, which actually includes some of that information, number of employees, the industry that they're in, so that you can drill down a bit deeper. But it really does touch everything from a sole proprietor up to 100 or more employees.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that's an interesting thing. And just as I've been learning through the assessor's office about the personal property declarations and some of the complexities, if you're a massage therapist and you have to declare your table that you use when you go to clients, so to see, what we really do have here in Madison in terms of small businesses, beyond just the visible things that we see obviously on the street, the restaurants, the movie theater, the more, the hotel, obviously. And then I guess that wouldn't include though educational institutions like the Grove School, which is one of our largest taxpayers. Does include the preschools, those kinds of things. So curious.
Yeah, our distribution of the survey did go to nonprofits as well. Yeah. And so anybody could respond.
Yeah.
We invited them
okay.
to.
Great. No, I thought it was very helpful. Thank you.
What about distribution in North Madison? Ryan, did you get any respondents from North Madison at all?
We didn't measure their location, specifically in town. We know where they were just because we have the respondent information. I'd have to look into the survey results to look at the business names to figure out where they are. But we did have respondents from throughout the town. They weren't centered just around the center of town.
And I think this is also another example of trying to leverage to get these things out to as many people as possible. And I think we're all learning how to do that better. You heard my example. I don't know with the Government Studies Committee. They had not as high a participation in their public forum, but trying to use whatever. I think it went out through the town website, your survey, but just thinking of ways that we can get it out to as many people as possible, so that they participate. Any other questions for Ryan? No? Well, and Ryan, I know you've been working closely with Bruce on this task force, and that's going to be evolving into the long-term recovery committee, which we'll be talking about. So a little bit, because that'll be a core part of that going forward. And it's kind of a nice transition now to move from the task force to, a little bit maybe larger committee, but also something that has kind of a direct pipeline up through town government for decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know EDC is happy to support that, especially, and I know that Bruce and Dave have heard me mention this a few times, but, specifically within the business and economic components of this task force, if there are specific elements, objectives that we would like to try and achieve, that would be, very, very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was great that you were able to actually get a list of businesses who had certified in Madison, since the town government didn't even get a copy of that.
Yeah, I don't know. They had to start up the generator or do something up at the state to get that list pumped out in a couple days.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a common sense thing, and I thought, we don't get a copy of that.
Yeah,
so
right.
Hopefully they've gotten that fixed.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, thank you for your patience.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And I guess we can, and we'll see you again, I'm sure, when we talk about some of the policy discussions you were mentioning coming back to the board with. So, so next item on the agenda is the bulky waste operational update. And is John on here? Is he even hanging around?
He is. I just transferred him over, so he should be hopefully showing up any second.
Okay. What I'm going to do is put up here I got a slide. And, basically what I wanted to talk about today was we opened this facility back up to the public several weeks ago, and we were holding off a little bit about commercial contractors because it requires a form of payment. And so we were trying to figure out, how we can do that in a safe manner without employees being exposed and creating kind of crowding issues also. And I did a tour, and I was planning to load up some photos I took at the, which I didn't get a chance to do today, but, I don't know how many of you have actually gone to this, to the stump dump, as is well known, but it's quite a sizable operation. And it is also includes lots of tree stumps that have been collected either by the town through Sandy and Irene, the hurricanes that came through here, or after other storms. And also some of it was just accumulated because the town at one point allowed people to just bring these things to the dump. And in order to get rid of these things, it costs us money. We actually pay services to come and remove things. So when you bring your, pickup truck loaded of debris from your yard and bring it to the stump dump, we actually then hire a commercial contracting company to take this stuff away. So it's kind of originated as a service to residents. It's become very popular now because it's local for contractors serving people in Madison. And the intention is these commercial contractors should be only coming here if they are serving Madison customers. But costs have gone up quite a bit in order to maintain this facility. And I know John, if he's on the line, he can talk a little bit about the history, but it tends to be under budgeted. He works within a very limited budget because it's expensive to get this stuff out of there. We have mountains of tree stumps that is going to cost a lot of money to get rid of. So they're just sitting there. And we got to figure out somehow to clean up the space and try to use it better. And so we started talking about fees. And, the reality is that we haven't raised these fees since 1995. So that was a little eye-opening to me when I went down and talked to the two guys working down there who have both been there a long time, and they were suggesting that we should definitely, or I guess it's 1996, excuse me, I'm looking at the sheet. So is John on?
Yes,
Lauren?
I'm on, Peggy.
Oh, okay, great. So I don't know if you just want to spend a second. I've got that your spreadsheet up on the screen, and maybe just give a little bit of overview of how it works with the commercial contractors, and then the fee, the kind of the data you collected on fees.
Yes. Okay. So as Peggy mentioned, we're open right now to residents, and we are looking at reopening to contractors on June 2nd. And at that time, to welcome the contractors back, I suppose, we're looking at increasing the fees, which have not been increased in 24 years. So what I've done is I've looked at surrounding towns, 5 surrounding towns listed in column 1 there, that have a similar operation to our facility. We don't have a scale, neither do these other facilities. Basically, the way it works is they use some system like class or size of vehicle to determine what fee category they're in. And so I put this sort of analysis together to compute an average on what the average fees are that other similar facilities charge. And you can see on the bottom line there, ranges from anywhere. The average ranges from $13 all the way up to $75, depending on the size of the vehicle or the size of the load of brush to be, disposed of at our facility. And so, we had thought that it would probably be a reasonable start to increase our fees to a number close to the average for these other facilities. But just to simplify things, we round it to like the nearest $10 increment. And so this will certainly increase revenues to some degree, but it by no means does it cover the cost of the disposal of all the brush material that we have to remove from the site every year. So, you can let me know if you want me to go into more detail, but I looked at the costs of the annual cost for the facility and the revenues, and just very broad overview. It costs about, including removing all the brush and a bunch of other items here, about $60,000 a year to run that facility. That doesn't include wages for the two attendants at the facility. But I think it includes everything else. And the revenues that we've received over the last, I looked and averaged the revenues received for the past 5 years, and it averages $10,500. So expenses are, on the order of 60,000. Revenues are 10,000. So what we would be proposing here, I guess, is to raise the fees for the first time in 24 years up to the average fees that other similar facilities are charging. I think it seems like a reasonable approach.
And I think the idea here is we're never going to cover the cost. Part of this is that a resident who is not a commercial contractor goes for free still. I think the idea was, at least there has to be some sort of, I'm sure commercial contractors have raised their prices over the last 24 years to their customers. And obviously the cost of operating the facility has grown substantially since 1996, just generally. So it was warranted to increase them. I think I did speak to the first selectman at Guilford briefly about this too, and they're looking at their own facility and they recognize the fees are a problem. That is managed more by that board that we just recently repopulated at the Guilford transfer station. So I think that is going to be definitely a big discussion topic for their facility. So I'm guessing that line is not going to stay the way it is once that board gets up and activated.
So can I just ask, so you're just proposing that the fees are raised for commercial, not residents? And like, what is the $5 Madison fees, $5 in the first column?
That's what the fees are now for commercial contractors. Residents don't pay anything. If you go from your house with your pickup, you don't pay anything up to a certain size, right, John?
Right. So if it's more than a car or small pickup truck, then we charge residents as if it's with the same rate that a commercial person would be charged. So if they come in with a small dump truck or a large rack body type truck, we would charge them at the commercial rate. Otherwise, the residents are allowed to dump for free.
John, do any other towns charge residents?
Yes, actually Guilford does. Some do and some do not. So it varies. But Guilford does.
Well, in Guilford, we talked about having some sort of resident sticker, which is I think what Brantford has, where you could get your sticker for the year and then drive into a facility. Because if we're, it's kind of an honor system right now, isn't it? In terms of residents, John, do they check licenses or?
They do actually. They check licenses, and the gate attendant has been there. He's a longtime Madison resident, and he knows most people that come into the facility, right? Just at a glance. So for the most part, he'll wave you in. If he doesn't recognize someone, he may check licenses. That's what he's supposed to be doing. So I believe that's the system.
But just so I understand that, if you hire somebody to clean out an area in your yard and they have a professional and they have a large pickup truck, they will pay $30 now to dump that stuff, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
John, in the $60,000 a year, do you have that broken out by cost per cubic yard to have it hauled away?
It is not by cubic yard. What I have, there's like 10 or so items on my expenses list here. The biggest one by far is brush removal, which has averaged $47,000 over the last 5 years. And but what it is it's a huge area, the size of like a football field by 10 feet high, that we could estimate sort of how much it holds when it's time to empty it out. But I don't have that information.
And I guess the reason I ask is for the commercial customers, I would think that we would want to at least be charging them the same on a per yard basis as we're paying to have it taken out at the very least. And it looks like the larger the increment of your dump truck, the cheaper per yard it is to dump, which I find if that still covers our costs to get rid of it.
Are you arguing, Bruce, that the proposed fees are too low?
No, I want to make sure that the fees that we're charging for these commercial operations are on par with the fees that we're paying to have it hauled away.
It sounds like this wasn't going to cover the cost anyways, right?
No,
Yeah.
I don't think we're, it'll come closer, but it certainly is not going to cover the cost. I mentioned the revenues are about $10,000 a year right now. And probably the majority of that is for the fees that we collect from landscape contractors for brush disposal. And just looking at the numbers here, it looks to me like we're increasing the fees threefold, maybe about 3 times. And I don't know if that translates to increasing revenues from 10,000 to 30,000, which does get us closer. I don't think we'll know until we raise the fees and see how that works out.
Well, and I think, obviously these are local, some of these are Madison-based businesses too, so we don't want to slam them with this giant fee increase because ultimately that'll just get passed on to their customers. And I think maybe the other data point, the bottom is a commercial contractor that offers brush removal. And so maybe that gives you an idea of the cost, because I'm guessing that since they are business people versus a town, their pricing would cover their costs to remove. So that might give a little bit more of an idea. Although they obviously might have greater economies of scales and different equipment and things like that, but it gives maybe a little bit of a benchmark of what, the removal cost is going to be, would be below, I think, what they're charging. But it's just a thought.
And how much or does the town put its brush and leaf waste here as well?
It does. It does. And it also has, residents. So it's hard to get a pure commercial number, but yes.
Right. So we're never, just based on the fact that the town is putting its waste there and residents are putting their waste there, we're obviously going to be putting more into the dump than the commercial payers could ever hope to pay for. So I'm not suggesting it should ever try to break even. I'm just suggesting that the commercial portion of the waste should at least cover its own operation. And I appreciate not handing it back to or not burdening our local businesses, but in doing so, what we're doing is we're passing the cost on to the taxpayers. So we're in effect subsidizing the local businesses.
Sounds significantly continuing to subsidize it, even if we raise these.
Well, I mean, if the town is 60% of the user, if they're 60% of what goes in, then maybe that's not the case, right? Maybe the town is the biggest user of the facility and therefore would be accountable for the largest portion of having it removed. I'm not suggesting we unfairly charge anybody. I'm just suggesting that if it costs, if 100,000 cubic yards are brought in commercially, whatever it costs to have 100,000 cubic yards taken out would dictate the fees. And if the total dump is 300,000 cubic yards, well, then the rest of it's got to be on the town.
Yeah, I don't know if they've ever tracked, this is a question, I guess. I mean, the problem is that, the old days, from what John had told me, there was a ticket system or a punching system, right? Where you could see how big the item was, the truck was, and then they'd punch a hole. So there would be a way to break that down, I guess, how many of the trucks were 2 cubic yards versus 4 cubic yards. And you'd have to go through and find all that data.
I mean, the information, it's possible to get at that information. We don't have the data, and to my knowledge, it's never been collected, but you know, the attendant will make an assessment as to what size, what category they're in, and charge accordingly. So we'll have that data actually. We're accepting credit cards or a check at the gate.
Yeah.
We'll have a copy of the receipt for that. So it is information that we could probably get at. And then as far as how the volume that we're removing from the site, we could estimate that as well. You know, and kind of get at that number that you're alluding to, Bruce.
So, but I think the idea, since we're reopening, we wanted to have the new fee structure in place since it's been closed, rather than having to delay and change the fees after people have been going there. Are you comfortable voting on a fee structure tonight, Bruce? I think you're muted.
Sorry about that,
Yeah.
but I have to be careful about the mic. Absolutely, I'm prepared to vote for this. I don't intend or was not intending to hold up decision. I'm just speaking more to the long-term sustainability of the pricing structure.
I'm also prepared to vote for this tonight. I do think we should establish a follow-up date when more information is available to see if this schedule needs further restructuring. I don't know whether that's 12 months from now or during the next budget cycle, but I think when more information is available, we should go back and look at this schedule again.
Certainly sooner than 1996. Just saying.
Well, and there are things in that, this incremental revenue will help. You asked for an increase of how much, John, that we did not get through the budget this year?
I think it was $10,000.
Yeah.
Something like that.
That just to keep, so he can keep eating away at those piles and piles of logs and stuff and get more and more of it removed so that we can, increase the space. So that'll pay for your, hopefully.
Yeah. The increase request, it should pay for that.
Right. So, Erin, are you good? I don't know. Is she on the screen or?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah.
I'm fine.
Okay. All right. So I guess then if we're.
I'm good too. I'm good too.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's all right.
All right. Hold on a second. So I guess, we need a motion, right? We have a motion to revise the fee schedule for commercial contractors at the town's brush facility according to the schedule as presented.
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second.
Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Everybody, great. Thank you. And thank you, John. Good work.
Thanks, John.
Trying to get you some more money in your budget there. So.
I know, I appreciate it.
So, but it is kind of interesting if you haven't been down there in a while, the amount of logs, and so more to talk.
Yeah,
okay.
It's been much worse, actually, believe it or not, after the storm. So, but it's starting to pick up. It's starting to build up again. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks.
Oh, okay. So next item is discuss long-term recovery committee. And so I think, this is obviously, I'd sent out to the board, and I'll share again, a very
Can we just lose Peggy?
I don't know where she went.
We promoted Dave.
Why are you guys laughing so much at that?
We just booted her.
No, she had to have booted herself because I didn't remove anybody. I just switched them over.
Meeting's over.
And you're sticking with it.
April Fools.
Yeah, I thought it was a hint.
I think she might have hit the wrong button when she went to share her screen.
And Sam's just laughing at us.
It's just
Say, we're busted, Sam. We saw you.
Scott, you're the interim. Take over.
Acting
You're the
for
acting.
Selectmen.
Let's
you're
keep
I don't-
moving.
Let me share my screen here. Oh, bye-bye.
I was hoping you guys would have adjourned the meeting while I was.
We tried. Trust me, we
Good
tried.
point, Scott.
I was going to show the PBT and get rid of myself, just like you did.
All right. I mean, I know it's late, and so this document is, the idea of sending out the long-term recovery committee draft was to get feedback from you guys. This is obviously a structure that we're coming out of the emergency operations team. We want to get your feedback. We don't have to go through each slide. I'll just do a brief overview maybe at this meeting for the public to understand the kind of the story behind it, because there's a lot of details. And then the idea was you can give us specific feedback on, you know, roles and responsibilities, goals, and all that stuff offline. And then also we're going to send out to you just who we're thinking of putting on the different resource support or recovery support groups. And get some suggestions from you on who would populate those. So we don't have to spend like an hour going through this document. So I will put this back up and hopefully not cut myself out this time. And then Sam is on as well because not sure who else is on at this point. Is Dave Anderson here?
Yep, I'm here.
Yep.
Okay. I'm just really losing it now. Okay. So anyways, this is the just an overview of the committee, and this is just highlighting what we talked about at the last meeting, that this is something that came out of FEMA, and it's required by the state to establish through our emergency operations plan. And so I think the approach on this was rather than having a formal kind of large bureaucratic structure, because this is kind of a big thing to take on. We wanted to go with more, I call it more of a hub and spoke structure, where we have the operational people kind of in the middle, basically as a conduit to government. And then we have the different sectors, so to speak, in the town, or stakeholders in the town, focused on areas of their concerns. And so Dave, I don't know if you want to spend a second, because I think you and Lauren had kind of come up with this structure. Do you have any specific thoughts you want to add to this?
No, not anything specific to add. I think, you know, kind of in my original vision, there was a little bit of overlap between each of these different recovery function groups, because I do think they blur in some sense. You know, everything's related to obviously public health in this particular instance, but that's hard to depict graphically. So I think the graphic is good as it is, but I do think there's some blurring between the different functional groups. So I don't know if the graphic is able to really depict that very well.
Yeah, and I think also when we talked about it, it was hard to, where do we put certain things? Does it go in this pie or that piece of the pie? So, so we were trying to, you know, figure out just something simple. And in terms of the goals, I mean, these are still a little bit of a work in progress, but, you know, the idea is to manage and coordinate the long-term recovery of our community. And really just make sure that we restore all town government services, and we reestablish our economy and our social base, basically try to get us all back to normal, and make sure that we are supporting all stakeholders in the community, that we're not just focused on certain segments, that we cast as wide as brush as possible to hit every part of our community. And I think we're learning now that just with the calls and the questions that we're getting about groups that want to reopen or groups that want to start up activities, this pandemic has hit every fabric of our community. So it's important that they understand how they reach town government and how they get a plan in place to reopen their businesses, organizations, you know, their churches. And then so the objectives is to, you know, do this in a safe manner. And then, and also look at our town functions. I think we want to get out of this is to make sure we've learned about how we run town government and what lessons we've learned doing this on a remote basis. And if there's some good takeaways from this experience where we can improve overall town operations. And then also provide clear guidelines to the public. And that's kind of the process that we've been going through right now, trying to assist the businesses and really we've been doing it more a small group in town government right now, but I think, and then also through the small business task force, but trying to really ramp up a way to make sure that, everybody gets the right guidance that the state's putting out. And then also improve communication, which I think there can be a lot more to learn there and how we can improve the communication to the public about how decisions are made and how we can help them. So that's kind of a really, and actually just the last bullet point, I think we learned that our emergency operations plan didn't talk about pandemics. And I think an important thing here is developing a playbook for the next one, which we hope we don't have to deal with, but or resurgence of the same pandemic. So that's something that we also have a goal to make sure that we get this down better and learn what we did well and what we didn't do well and how we can improve it for the next go round, which we hopefully won't have to do. I think our town has a good history of dealing with hurricanes because we've learned from those over the last 250 years. But this is really the first documented pandemic that the town government has had to deal with. Although sometimes I wonder if we should go back through the Historical Society records and look at what the town did in 1918 during the Spanish flu. So those are some of the objectives. And then this is just talking about the administrative council, which is pretty much employees, because we see ourselves as the operators and the regulators. And this is all kind of coming out of emergency operation. And then with the really the only non-employee is Bruce Wilson as just one of the selectmen who's been involved with the long-term business task force. So he kind of gives a perspective outside of the town employees. And our job is to really coordinate and act as liaisons to the specific recovery support function groups. And then have feedback kind of come from those groups to the town so that we can figure out how to do things better, get resources for people, improve communications, all the things on responsibilities. And like I said, this is a work in progress. So, you can share your thoughts with us. And then the actual recovery support function groups are all the stakeholders. And this is not all inclusive either, this list, but each of these groups would be represented in one of these recovery support function groups. And their area is to really recommend changes to us, advise us about how we can improve things and make things better. And then also it's a two-way street. It's information coming bottoms up from community members, and then it's information coming down from the state and local government to the community. So they're kind of a conduit to that into the different sectors. And so here is the actual recovery. I keep forgetting what these are called. Recovery support function groups. Dave, I don't know if you want to just spend a few minutes talking about these. It was hard, right, to come up with these?
Yeah, I guess maybe since Lauren and I didn't meet, I'll let maybe Lauren go through some of that.
Yep.
Okay, Lauren.
So what you'll see here are the different kind of buckets that we tried to put everything into. And again, going back to Peggy and Dave's comments earlier, it wasn't always easy to decide what went in what bucket because so many things overlapped. And, in general, the pandemic is a public health crisis. So technically everything falls under the public health bucket, but that kind of defeats the purpose of having a long-term recovery committee if we're just giving Trent everything to do. So we kind of had to decide what made the most appropriate, what was the most appropriate decision in parceling out the work. And we actually went, so the last meeting, we had a slide for you that showed all of the different functions, and there were, I don't even remember, 16 or 17 So we took that information and we whittled it down so that we were not so cumbersome. I mean, the framework from the state and from FEMA was a little cumbersome in the number of people that were on the committee. And we, like Peggy said, we kind of went to a model that has each of us taking a certain section, meeting with our group of people, and then reporting back to each other in this administrative council role. So you'll see that we've tried to put things into what makes sense: government operations, public health, education, emergency management, especially when we consider any future pandemic or the resurgence of this pandemic. The economic development piece is similar to the business task force that was already created. So they'll kind of continue to meet and bring back those ideas to us on the economy in town. And then we also have the community outreach piece, which really pulls in those civic organizations, the faith-based groups. And that was part of the state framework that we knew was really important to include. And then we have an arts, recreation, and culture. And that's because so much of what we have reopening now and so many questions that we're getting now are really recreation and culture based. You know, how do we reopen the beaches and keep the beaches safe? How do we decide what sports leagues may or may not be able to run this summer and into the fall? Those have been a lot of the questions that we've received from the residents.
Example of, like, you know, the Madison Beach Club, where does that fall? It's a social club. It's actually a restaurant in that sense, and food service. It also has tennis, so it's got a beach. So it's tough. So we're trying to populate, you know, really create a point of entry into the recovery process for stakeholders so that they fit into a box and then they can work upward through that box. And then I think the idea would be, you know, the groups below each of these boxes would have maybe 6 members on it or something. And that's something that we're trying to whittle through. For example, the education one, you know, the school district already has a recovery committee that they're doing for the Madison schools, and Gail sits on that. So we wouldn't recreate that committee for them. So she kind of acts as a liaison to what the school district is doing. But then we also have, you know, private schools in town, as well as preschools, you know, that are going to be needing more guidance and help and questions. Like there's been questions about graduation ceremonies for not only just the public schools, but the private schools. So we're trying to create a channel of, you know, because right now it's all just coming either to me or to Sam, and it's all over the place. And so this gives people kind of a home, so to speak. And then each of the leaders of the groups would be kind of a champion for that area. So Scott Erskine today was on calls that I had with a couple of the sports organizations today, and we talked about that. So he's going to be that conduit for them to come through to the administrative council at one point with a plan of reopening plan. So that's kind of the heart of it. Any questions or comments?
I had one question on government operations. There's a term there, town council, and it's not clear to me whether that refers to the Board of Selectmen or to our town attorney.
Well, I think it's Floyd.
Yeah, it's
That's the town attorney.
Yeah.
Then it should be spelled a little bit differently.
Yeah, that's my mistake. SEL, sorry.
Oh, okay. And
it was late.
So where does the Board of Selectmen fit in here?
Well, there's representatives on, you know, on this. I think for us is just to keep, you know, you involved with it. This is more of a process. It's not a decision-making body. And so I think maybe to keep, you know, Bruce and I would be keeping you up to date on how the process is working, and then the decision-making in terms of any public policy that will require the Board of Selectmen, we would continue to do as we have been doing, you know, talking about changes to the rules for the beaches, or talking about, you know, the tax deferral program, that kind of stuff. You know, and I think that, you know, we could do regular reports maybe about, you know, how this is going, and see how it goes. I mean, it's learning. And we've looked out other towns. Some towns have gotten something pulled together very quickly, which is very different Others have done nothing on this yet, right? Although they're asking for everybody to submit something, right, Sam?
Yeah, so this is a nationwide thing. It's part of the FEMA plan, which goes down to the state, which comes to our region. So we're in Region 2 for Connecticut, and we're in Region 1 for FEMA. And it's really the crux of the committee is so there's not any duplication of effort. So everybody knows what's going on, and we can coordinate all the recovery aspects. That nobody gets left out. We know the needs of everybody, so that we can properly plan for and take care of all those needs without any duplication of effort. And that's really what the committee's meant for. Now, Peggy had mentioned earlier, this is all modeled after natural disasters, in which we don't have any. We don't have to rebuild the infrastructure. The infrastructure is fine. We just have to get people back to work. We got to get rid of this virus and get people back to work. So that's really the whole goal of it. So we got to kind of modify the plan a little bit because we're not rebuilding roads. We're not putting up new telephone poles and power lines. We don't have to build new seawalls and all that stuff, which is fortunate. And with that said, hopefully, they're predicting a pretty active hurricane season this year. So hopefully we don't get anything up here. We've already had one named stormed already. So, so really that's what this whole plan encompassed originally. So we're modifying the plan to take care of this pandemic. And so keeping it small like this and manageable, I think it's going to serve a lot better.
So is this intended to address the current recovery efforts, or is this intended to be a long-term plan that would stay in place for other emergencies that may come down the road in the future?
It's both. It does both. So it's intended to try to get what the businesses need to get back on their feet and get running, and then in the future, we want to. A lot of these experts are saying this thing's going to come back with a vengeance in the fall. So we want to make sure that we have enough personal protective equipment and all that stuff to handle it. And so we're stocking up on it, and we're getting stuff from the state now as well. So it's kind of a twofold project.
And I see a lot of this being, some of these boxes are not going to be as busy. It depends on where we are in the phasing. So right now we're spending a lot of attention on economic development of reopening certain businesses. We're spending more time is coming on the boxes for recreation because of the way the phase 2 is working. Education is going to be probably more of a big topic, as we get through the summer and get closer to school. And then, really until they allow large events, the churches and, some of the larger events and things like that are not going to be top. We're just kind of, working through as these phases happen that the governor has put out. So, I think, it's a challenge. I think we're gonna have to learn from this and maybe have it evolve a bit too as we move forward, because we don't want to create bottlenecks. We don't want to create bureaucracy. And I think the purpose of having this different sector teams kind of makes it less bureaucratic, because then they can just focus on their issues rather than getting bogged down on calls. If somebody's focused on schools, do they really need to be bogged down in a bunch of phone calls about church services or something? So,
and you have to understand too, there's people out there on both ends of the spectrum. There's some people that don't think there's any problems at all, and there's other people that are petrified to walk out their door. And we're dealing with both at the town hall right now, just trying to set up some training that we have. And, it's kind of a monumental task dealing with all the different aspects of their security with how they feel. And so all those things have to be addressed. And I'm sure that there's a lot of that out in the public as well. That some people think, don't have any problem with what's going on, and other ones are, don't want to go to any stores. They don't want to go out. They're afraid of this. And And rightfully so. I mean, it's, it's something invisible that we don't have any idea where it is. And, the last couple of weeks, there's been a slight uptick in, outside of the nursing homes in Madison, of some positive cases. So, we'll see in the next couple of weeks how this reopening goes, and hopefully we stay steady and it goes the way it is, and we can keep proceeding to, to phase 2. But like it says, this is going to be a long-term recovery.
And so I think the idea then would be to get, input from the board on just the overall structure, goals and objectives, try to get those finalized, and then who's going to be in each one of those RSF groups. And then those RSFs should then focus on what their goals and objectives are. They know their sectors the best, and they know what problems there are and where they want to focus their time. And then empower them to go out and do community outreach and make recommendations back up through to the town. So
maybe that's the part that I'll think about this offline, and I'll submit some comments and feedback. Yeah. But as I'm thinking off the top of my head, I think the only thing that I'm not 100% sure I understand is the decision-making component of this. So, when they go out, they reach out to the public, they come back, they generate some thoughts and ideas. Who are they then recommending that to? Is that leadership council in the middle, or is it the Board of Selectmen?
So right now, everything's still going through the Emergency Operations Center. So that right now, until we get out of the state of emergency, that's where all the decisions are being made.
Yep.
And we're talking operational decisions, right? And typically the Board of Selectmen gets into fees, like we had fees tonight, right? So things that are the traditional area of the Board of Selectmen would continue to do so and be that way. But in terms of specifics, operating plans and, can somebody have tables, outside tables at their restaurant establishment, all that kind of stuff would be going through here versus through the Board of Selectmen. And I think
so, can we have a farmer's market on the green?
Hey, you're reading my mind, Scott.
I got you, Sam.
June 5th. Don't quote me on that.
So we are in discussions about trying to get it moved back to the green, but all the people weren't at the table.
Yeah.
So they're developing plans. They're going to submit them for us to look at, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. So I think that the other thing, I think what I'm finding is that people are so overwhelmed in general in the public that there's not a lot of people that have tons of time to just sit on these committees either. They're going to be there for their specific issue, right? So I think we want to make this as nimble and simple as possible and not tie up a lot of people's times that are on these RSFs either. Because a lot of them are going to be focused on their specific, issue. Like we can populate, and this is where it'd be good to get some more thoughts offline about who to sit on these different RSFs, because that person has to not only be focused on their own organization, but it's also trying to share ideas and represent more than their own group, right? It's representing an entire sector. So more to come. We'll have another update on this, and hopefully I think it would be helpful if you guys could all read this offline this week and just send back some feedback and comments. It would be greatly appreciated. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Bruce, I don't know if you want to throw anything in there. Bruce was part of the team that kind of put this together. So.
No, I mean, I think you've covered the ground really well, and I think that the role of the Board of Selectmen, will hopefully emerge naturally as we transition from reacting to what's right in front of us to planning for what's out a little bit farther for us. The more we move towards our new normal, the more the Board of Selectmen can and should be involved in the decision process. And certainly, even in the state of emergency, if we're establishing a long-term policy, I would hope that that policy would go in front of the Board of Selectmen. You know, anything that's short-term and would expire with an emergency, that maybe is a different situation, but anything we would persist beyond there, you know, I think deserve to come up for the Board of Selectmen for discussion and action.
I mean, going forward, I don't really see any emergent needs where, you know, like if we have to make a decision right away, you know, that might happen. But if, you know, I think we're kind of out of the kind of emergency area, unless this thing has a resurgence. And then I think, you know, a lot of these decisions can take the normal route of going to the Board of Selectmen meetings and getting approved. You know, I don't think there's anything urgent in nature to get them done right away.
Well, and I also think that during this pandemic, we're loosening some things up that maybe we reflect on. Did we need to be so strict on some of these guidelines or regulations, or, you know, and it was interesting talking with some people in the state government about that. You know, can we live without these regulations after the pandemic? You know, have we learned from them, and maybe they were unnecessary? And, you know, so I think that's going to be an important thing that the Board of Selectmen could get, is a good debrief on what we can change or how we can, you know, lessons learned, right? To decrease red tape, perhaps in town hall or permitting or something like that. So are we good moving on?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay. Oh my
Right, so
God.
you're all set with me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Good night.
See you, Sam. Thanks.
All right. All right. So moving on, appointments and resignations. Should I just read these appointments and then we do it as a?
Yes, I think we have to do them individually.
Do them individually? Okay. Can I have a motion to appoint John Woods to the Comcast Cable Advisory Council of South Central Connecticut for a term to expire on July 31st, 2022?
So moved.
Okay, any discussion? This was new that I didn't even know we had this.
I'll second it, Lauren, if you need me to.
Okay. All right, all in favor?
What is this? So what is this?
Yeah,
I didn't even know what it is.
I know.
So it's a board of Comcast, but they ask the area towns to appoint one resident member. So John Woods has been on this advisory council for as long as I've been working here.
Oh, okay.
So he's up for reappointment. I've never had anyone else interested in running. So
I didn't even know it was on our list of boards and commissions. So interesting.
it's not a town board or commission. It's an actual advisory council of Comcast, but we have to appoint our town liaison.
Boy, there's a lot of citizens that would love to have a way to influence Comcast, I'm sure. But I think for purposes of expedience,
sorry, I'm being a knucklehead here, but do we ever get any information back though from John Woods in his long run as on this, whatever we're calling it here?
Well, you've been on the Board of Selectmen. Have you?
I've never heard anything about it. So
no report or okay.
No.
Okay. Well, we can.
What are we learning? How does it benefit Madison, et cetera, et cetera?
We can certainly ask him to come and talk to us, right?
Yep.
Okay. Any more discussion? No? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. May I have a motion to appoint Bob Hubbard to the Ad Hoc Government Study Committee?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion?
Did somebody interview him? I don't know where
We
that came
interviewed
from
him.
either. So
We interviewed him as part of the initial interview process.
nice.
And so he's replacing.
Fully vetted.
Yeah.
Nice.
Helen Berlin, right? He's replacing Helen Berlin.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Who had to resign? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Great. All right. a motion to accept the resignation of Steve Shaw from the Board of Police Commissioners.
So moved with appreciation and gratitude.
Second that.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so tax abatements. Do we have tax abatements? I always forget about what to do here.
Yes, you received the tax abatement summary, and they are totaling $871.23.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. All right, citizens' comments. Anybody left?
There's one.
Yep, one guest who wants to give a comment.
Okay.
Hey, Gus.
Hold on, he's coming over. Gus, you can unmute yourself and then give your comment.
Still muted.
Yeah, maybe we took so long he abandoned us. Gus, are you there?
He's on there twice.
Yeah, he was on there 4 times before. So at least now it's only 2.
Really anxious to say hello.
Yeah, this is the one that had the hand raised, but
yeah, he might be on to other things right now.
yeah.
Okay, well, he's very good about submitting it in email as well. So I know he's sent out stuff to us this week about a few issues. So, all right, so that's it for citizen comment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Oh, there he
Are
is.
Did you got me now? Okay. I just wanted to point out the benefit of having an elder statesman like Al Goldberg sitting on your board, because I looked it up in the dictionary and he knows the difference between a town council and a town council.
I know. That was me. I'm embarrassed.
Peggy, don't be squeezing your nose there. You're going to rub your eye out. But that's the benefit. And the other thing is, I
Was that your comment, Gus? Or you just causing trouble?
No, here's trouble. If you wanted trouble, I sent an email in making a suggestion about an appearance on the meeting tonight, and it didn't happen. So I'd like to have Lauren explain why she didn't have her children on tonight.
That's because for once they left me alone.
I know. I've had Lauren's kids on all day, so.
Okay. Good night and thank you. And I've been on since 6 o'clock. You know, I was on with the government committee too.
Doing yeoman's work there, Gus.
Yeah.
Nice.
There you go. Good night and thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thanks for hanging in there.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Everybody.
Enjoy what you can, what is left of it. So.